Japanese feature on Fukushima takes place for the first time in Fukushima, telling the story of one of the many families forced to leave their homes following one of the world's worst nuclear disasters. Here's more from our i24 News culture correspondent, Shachar Peled.
Homeland is no longer just the name of a famous American TV series, but also the emotionally charged title of Japan's first ever mass-market movie set in Fukushima. 3 years after the world's worst nuclear crisis since Chernobyl, which forced more than 160,000 people from their homes, director Nao Kubota decided to go back and tell their story.
I wanted to stop the situation fading from our minds. I wanted to make a film that would be relevant for a long time to come, that people could watch in 10, 20, 50 or even 100 years and see that this sort of catastrophic situation came about.
On March 11, 2011, a massive offshore earthquake and tsunami killed over 19,000 people and set off meltdowns at the Fukushima nuclear plant, forcing the government to declare it an off-limits exclusion zone due to high radiation levels. The new film centers on a young man whose family fled their ancestral farm in the area as he secretly decides to move back into the nuclear off-limits zone. The production, taking place for the first time in this no-man's land, re-triggered widespread debate in the country about whether the reactors should be restarted or scrapped for good. But cast and crew members chose to remain neutral on the matter.
The movie is neither positive nor negative about nuclear power. And as an individual, I don't think I should comment on whether the film made me think it's a bad thing or not. Personally, I'm not really thinking about it at all.
But Kubota's Homeland, however subtle its message, has managed to strike a nerve with at least some viewers.
It made me remember that nothing's really solved, despite the fact that politics is moving on. Our Prime Minister is plugging nuclear power as though nothing happened in Fukushima. The movie made me feel that there's something wrong with that.
Fukushima's fate remains unknown, as experts expect the cleanup process to take decades. Meanwhile, Japan's rural families, who lost both health and property in the disaster, have received a new voice.
And joining me for more on the story is i24 News culture correspondent Shachar Peled. Good evening.
Hi, Lucy.
So, Shachar, how come it took 3 years to film in Fukushima?
Well, it was a very tragic story, and it remains to be one. Thousands of families still haven't returned to their homes. And since this film doesn't try to present any answers, I think this is what made it actually happen and actually be created. Its director says it is a timeless story of one family, and I think taking this direction is what made it successful. The issue of nuclear of Japan is still very, very sensitive in the country. It's very touchy, and regardless, film revenues are dropping. So filmmakers don't want to deal with this issue, with such a heavy and sensitive issue in Japan. There were past attempts. Only last December there was a small independent film called The House of the Rising Sun, but it was in much smaller scale, not to the bigger audiences in Japan, and it didn't take place in Fukushima itself. It was about the story, but I'm guessing the crew didn't want to take any risks this one. Yes. And there was a film in 2012, an attempt at least, called Land of Hope, where the director couldn't find any funding in Japan. His Japan-based investors didn't want to take part in it because it was a taboo too far for them. So it is an unprecedented film 3 years later, and hopefully it will be successful as well.
And if we're going just neighboring
yes.
Japan, in Thailand,
yes.
Something completely else.
Completely different, going to the political side, actually. We're staying in the Far East, and in Thailand, a new, funny, sarcastic satire show is now broadcast. It's only on the web, but it's already very viral, very popular, over 250,000 hits on each episode. It's called Shallow News in Depth. And
how's it called?
Shallow News in Depth.
Okay.
And it's making fun of the traditional news in Thailand, much like similar shows in the UK and the US. Actually, one of its hosts is referred to as Jon Stewart on crack. But it is unprecedented in Thailand because it's a country which is ranked 130 out of 180 countries in freedom of press. It's even below South Sudan and Afghanistan. There are very strict laws about not making any criticism about the monarchy. So they are saying they are independent, an an independent production and they can do whatever they want. They haven't been criticizing the royal family yet. They're focusing mainly on the clashes, the political clashes in the past months. No, they're saying so far no repercussions. They have been receiving some phone calls, but nothing to be too anxious about. They're mainly making fun of both sides, the anti and pro-government protesters in Thailand, making fun of what they're saying, what they're wearing. There's the red and yellow shirt, so they're making great jokes about it. People love them because they are taking both sides and making fun of them.
Trying to be
Thailand
objective,
needs that, I guess.
Yes, I'm trying to be objective, but Jon Stewart on crack? Really?
That's what you get
We're
in
still,
Thailand.
but we're still staying with your voice.